Welcome to Protea Conversations, the podcast where leadership in business and accounting isn't just discussed, it's explored. I'm your host, Zane Stevens, and thank you for joining me as we delve into the minds of some of the most influential leaders in the industry. Our journey is one of discovery, from unraveling the unique stories that shaped our guests' careers to the invaluable advice that fueled their success. We are here to provide you with simple, actionable advice to accelerate your career and personal growth. Whether you're a budding professional or a seasoned executive, these conversations are designed to offer insight and perspective that resonate with everyone. So tune in, engage, and be inspired as we build better leaders together. Welcome to Protea Conversations. Today I have the privilege of interviewing Isaac Smith. Isaac is somebody that I've been very fortunate to meet a couple of times in person, which has been a great experience. Isaac is an accountant, a podcast host, and entrepreneur who's making waves in the world of finance and beyond. Isaac is deeply involved in his innovative venture TeamUp, a platform that empowers top Filipino accountants by providing other accountants with the opportunity to hire them directly and without the burden of ongoing BPO fees. His commitment to creating value and fostering talent is truly inspiring. Welcome, Isaac.
Aw, thanks for that, Zane. I'm happy to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, it's always nice when you interview people that you know. And I've been fortunate enough to meet you at QuickBooks Connect, and then we were able to connect when I was in Portland a couple of weeks ago as well, which was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to get to know people you've seen on the internet, with that little profile picture. And it's like, oh, that's a real person. You look bigger.
You look more real. I'm glad it's not an AI generated one.
Yeah.
Where there are a few of those running around where people's profile pictures are AI generated. I'm like, just want to see your face, just for even if it's just a little bit. So we obviously started off and I spoke about TeamUp, and I definitely want to speak a lot more about that. But your journey doesn't begin there. So
Oh, no.
You were obviously an accountant before you were a recruiter for the accounting industry. But let's start by talking about how did you get into the world of accounting?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I'm actually not an accountant. I just have a bookkeeping business, and it's something that I started, and I guess we can talk about why. But I really I really jumped in before I even really knew what I was doing, and made lots of mistakes, and then eventually sorted it out. But that's kind of been a theme for me, which is not what you want to hear your accountant or bookkeeper say, right?
Yeah. I had no idea what I was doing, but we figured it out.
Yeah. But I guess the short version of the why and how of it is, I actually used to be an architect and, worked on some cool projects, but I was completely miserable and went looking for something new. And I got into e-commerce because that sounded like an exciting, fun thing to do. And I did that for several years, and I grew a business, and all the while I was really struggling with my understanding of my numbers. And I was so frustrated with my accountants. They never seemed to be able, I actually kind of went into a little bit of a crisis in my business. And, as maybe we'll talk about later on, I find actually on reflection, it's actually a lot more mental than anything real. But I was so frustrated with my accountants. They were either unwilling or unable to explain things in just a way that made any sense at all. And so fast forward some time, I ended up selling that business. But before I did my own sort of deep dive in education on like just exactly what's going on here with these numbers. And when I found out, it made such a profound impact on me and my anxiety levels, just having concrete understanding of what's going on. It turned out actually that my business wasn't doing as bad as I thought it was. It's like, oh, imagine that, right? Why couldn't you just tell me this? And so when I sold that business, that was just so unbelievably impactful for me. I thought like, wow, if only I had known this all along, had this understanding of my numbers, I wouldn't have had all these months of anxiety and feeling awful about myself. And so, I wanted to help other people find that understanding and peace of mind that I had. So I started a bookkeeping business for e-commerce business owners, but I didn't actually know what I was doing. But hey, we live, we learn. And eventually, it didn't take very long before I realized, oh, I'm in here way over my head. So I brought on a partner who actually had the background in accounting that I didn't have. And we, over the course of the next several months, got that all sorted out, and then was able to start delivering actual good results to our clients. And so it worked out well eventually, but yeah, that was the problem that I was really trying to solve.
It's interesting when we go into things with the idea of what were the problems that I had as a business owner, which you are still to this day, and I am as well. There is a lot of times when there is self-doubt, and it is pretty interesting. And I get this, I see this with my clients as well, where I'll send them information, and in their mind, things were way more doom and gloom than reality.
Yeah.
But all it takes is a couple of, notes like, hey, your revenue's up year on year, or your profits up year on year. Because I feel like as a business owner in general, it's very easy to cherry pick bad information. There obviously are the business owners out there that cherry pick the good information to make themselves feel better. But I think the reasonable business person will fixate almost sometimes on the bad criteria. My bank balance is down. Something's got to be wrong. But there could be any, millions of reasons for it. Could just be timing, right? I just had to pay for some inventory, so my cash is lower year on year just because of the timing of it. And I think it's hard for accountants in general to realize that our job is more than just putting the numbers together, but it's actually communicating to the client what those numbers are. And the simple note of just like, you're up, can make such a big difference to the psyche of business owners. And that whole concept of communication is really just not looked at enough by accountants in general. And I mean, to a point where you are the extreme case where it's like, shit, this is terrible. I'm going to have to go make something because I want other people to have a better experience than I did.
Yeah. And you sent me some information ahead of time for questions I should be thinking about. And I forget what the question is, but I have been thinking, being a business owner, an entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it, it's so much more mental and emotional than you think it is going into it. In fact, I would say it's almost entirely a mental game of keeping yourself on the level, right? Not too low, not too high, doing the things you need to do, believing in yourself when, the information around you says this isn't going to work or something bad happens. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. And a lot of people don't get that. And like you say, helping your clients, the business owners, like just giving them that little bit of information. We kind of joked that my job after I started the bookkeeping business was really just talking clients off the ledge, so often, I launched that business in 20 by myself, and then my partner came in quickly to join me, and then we relaunched in 2020. And so, of course, 2020, what happened then a few months later? And so for e-commerce, our clients were e-commerce companies. And so that whole COVID experience for e-commerce was, for everybody, but e-commerce had like crazy highs and then crazy lows. And then like, we're trying to figure out where the middle is going to be. And that being there and being that support, like sometimes it's not even about the numbers. Other times it's just like a third party, somebody to talk to. And the numbers tell you the truth, right? And if you know what they mean. So yeah, it's really important.
Well, we're right in the thick of it right now. And there was so much just in that little bit that you just said there. So I want to start with the first point in there, and that's, the mental side of being a business owner. And I think one of the things that most people don't talk about enough, it's not told to you when you're sort of like, I want to be a business owner, but your business is on your mind 24/7, 365.
Yeah. Always.
It's just there all the time, right? Like it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you're doing. There's a little bit of your brain, your
Yeah.
subconscious, that's constantly thinking about your business. And I know I wasn't prepared for that. And I mean, you're like living proof of it. Like you can get into your own head about things, clearly in a negative way for you. I mean, obviously there's other people that they can overinflate stuff, and there is that side of it, which is just as dangerous. But finding good partners, be it accountants, attorneys, mentors, friends, that you have a sounding board to talk about the highs and lows, can be really, really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I
it's
mean,
all about
like,
support structure, right?
yeah, and it's also, it can be lonely because, there are relatively few business owners, as a percent of the population or whatever. It's kind of hard to find people you connect to. So that's why communities are important, groups are important. Absolutely.
Yeah, finding those support structures, whatever they look like, and understanding that those support structures might need to change as you develop through your journey as well, is such an important lesson for anybody that's thinking about, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be a business owner. I mean, even if you want to be a leader, it's pretty lonely at the top, right? And finding ways to balance that is important. And what you found, obviously, is that a good accounting resource would take a little bit of that pressure off as well.
Absolutely.
Do you think you were able to sort of create that environment in the bookkeeping business that you guys created that provides e-commerce business leaders with that support system that they really need?
Well, yeah, I mean, it really started. Actually, what happened was I sold that e-commerce business, and I'm in all these e-commerce communities. There's Facebook communities, there's other communities, groups, and one day I suddenly just actually had nothing to do, and I was like, okay, well, what do I do? I gave myself a month, and I said, you're gonna just sit on the couch and do nothing for a month. And I got so antsy. I was like, all right, where's the laptop? I've got a movie going. And I'm like, okay, open the laptop, see what's going on in the community. And so I just started commenting in there, asking questions and saying, hey, everybody, this actually made a really big difference to me. It's like simple things. Like, I think this is bringing it a little bit back to accountants. I didn't even know that my net profit line on my income statement did not have anything to do with what I'm supposed to have in the bank. And like, I'm years into business at this point, and I don't know that. And so it's like, I felt like somebody should have told me this. It's like, I didn't know that. It's like the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. Like, that was an unknown unknown to me. I had no idea that I should try to find the answer to that. And so it's like, so I just started commenting in these groups like, hey, this is important. Have you thought about this? By the way, you should be looking at this. Oh, don't worry about that. And just helping out. And I ended up having, lots of, back in those days wasn't that long ago. Anyway, having, video calls, Skype calls with people, and just like, hey, show me what you got. Let me see if I can help you sort this out. And, I didn't know if there would be a business in that. I kind of hoped there would be. And actually, I kind of thought that I would build a course rather than a service. I thought I would have a course that would just teach people the basics like that. What does the net profit mean? But it ended up people needed a lot more help than just that. So it turned into a bookkeeping service. But yeah, I'll say one other thing. Like, as we were building that business, so ended up getting my first batch of clients, and then, working with them. The idea is, hey, we're going to set up a monthly meeting, and we're going to talk about your issues, and we're going to see if we can meet you where you are. And our mission was really to help figure out where they were in their financial literacy, and just give them that one next thing. What's that next thing that they should know about? And so I was really happy that we were able to do that. I also developed a series of modules, know your numbers modules for one of the e-commerce courses that and communities that I'd been in. So people were watching those videos, and yeah, I've really felt good about what I was able to do with those communities.
That's fantastic. This is my all too regular shout out that anybody who's going to college or junior college, whatever it is, go take accounting 101 so that if you get into the situation, you know the basics. And if you're past that stage, find platforms where you can learn basic financial literacy, the ability to look at a balance sheet and understand it, understand what your profit and loss looks like, and then figure out what a cash flow means. I mean, I've spoken to entrepreneurs that have been super successful for 20 plus years and they still don't understand a cash flow statement and how that ties to their equivalent numbers. So go figure it out, go find it. Sounds like Isaac's done some good stuff out there as well. So go search that information. But learn to understand the basics of accounting. It will help you as a business leader.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing is, once you have that understanding, whatever industry you're in. So like you're in the wine industry. I was in the e-commerce industry, and there's all these unique things about each of these industries that make them different in some way or another. And like for example, e-commerce often has depending on the e-commerce model, right? There's what's called drop shipping, and there's like these Amazon sellers, and there's direct to consumer. And like, just for example, the drop shippers have kind of a unique, what I called the cash flow wave, where the cash flow is coming in before it's going out. And, it's a bit different. And so it's really good if you can talk to the community, your clients, in a way that they understand. Like if you can understand those simple things, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, being able to speak the same language as the people you're talking with is very important. And that's not, speaking English, that's speaking the language of the industry. There's a lot of terminology that I just use secondhand right now because I'm in the wine space, which is exactly what you were doing in the e-commerce space, right? And I think that's sometimes why there is the power of niche out there. It's because you learn the language so that you can actually connect with these people in the same terminology that they're using on a daily basis, rather than just spewing accounting talk. Like most people don't know what EBITDA means, so let's drop the shenanigans, right? Let's talk to them in a language they understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it sounds like that is a big part of what sort of made you successful in your bookkeeping business, is being able to talk that language and have that extra step. I mean, you're calling it a bookkeeping business, but you've got this consulting side where you're sitting with people and talking to them, which is fairly unique in anybody that calls himself bookkeeping. A lot of that is purely transactional. And I think it makes a big difference when it comes from somebody who's been in their shoes and actually understand what it means to run those businesses. Were you seeing that as a big advantage, selling point, that people were interested in having those conversations?
Completely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, like I said, I just jump in and I do things, and I don't know that it's not normal. I didn't know that there were tax accounting firms, and there are CAS firms, and there are advisory firms, and there are bookkeepers. I didn't know any of that. And all I knew is I had a problem, and I come from e-commerce, and in e-commerce, maybe that might have been one of the main reasons why I was so frustrated in the first place, was e-commerce is 100% about, well, yes, products, but also the customer service. Customer service has to be on point. And I happen to be a bit of a people pleaser myself. I don't know if you could tell that, but yeah, I am. And customer service for me was hugely important. And I learned, through those years of running the business I sold, but also a failed business before that, I made a lot of mistakes, and I learned, like, oh, even if I'm right, I have to talk to them in a different way, right? I have to make them happy even when they're wrong, for sake of reputation, for sake of just being a nice guy. But also, they can charge you back. so you really don't have a lot of leverage in transactions. And so you're incentivized, nearly forced to go over the top in your customer service. At least that's the way I took it. I know there are some businesses out there who don't do that, which I can't even comprehend.
Yep.
Because like, why would you run a business that way? So stressful. And so that was my mindset, is like customer service. And then when I'm engaging with my accountants and they don't, I didn't even know that there was this kind of, I don't know if stereotype is the right word, but just this idea of the unresponsive accountant. I didn't know that was a normal thing. And so I'm just like, oh,
Neither did
what's
I.
going on
Sorry.
here? Like, so it was just obvious to me that if you provide customer service with your bookkeeping business, everybody's going to want that.
Yeah, it's it's a really important point. And I've spoken about this a little bit on LinkedIn. When I have clients that are looking to change their tax people, it's not because they feel like it's too expensive, though that becomes part of the conversation, but they feel like it's too expensive because the communication is just terrible. They're asking a question today and it could take a week to respond, and then the next time it's 2 weeks, and then it's one day. And it's this inconsistency in communication and zero focus on customer service, which leaves people dissatisfied. And then all of a sudden price becomes a problem. It's weird though. You can almost charge what you like in reason if you can back it up with good service, because the outcome, like the actual product in accounting, like a tax return, who the heck knows what's good or bad tax return, right? I can't tell you that, and I'm an accountant. But I can tell you, if I have a tax provider who is engaged, answers my question, and is reliably answering those questions, I'm going to be less worried about the price. It's not going to bother me as much because he's keeping me out of trouble and making sure he's asking my right questions so that we're planning correctly. And, that is a great lesson from the e-commerce space, because it is customer service. And the ones that do well have great customer service. And, you can hate Amazon all you like, but their customer service is great. And that's why they're successful.
Yeah. I have a tip. Here's a very quick tip that this is so simple, but it'll make a huge difference in your customer service, and it's not any extra work. So just a little bit of context. When I started my bookkeeping business, like I said, I didn't know anything about the industry or accountants in general, but I have learned over time, and I understand now there's this, accountants are very often reserved. And they don't want to say things before they know the 100% accurate answer. And oftentimes, this is my perception, but I think this is right. A lot of times, accountants are slow to respond because they've got to their satisfaction yet. So they're just not going to say anything. And that's okay if you want to give a good answer to somebody. But in customer service, this is the lesson I learned in e-commerce, is say something, anything. It doesn't matter what it is, say something immediately. And because the worst possible thing, like in e-commerce, even worse than shipping the wrong product to somebody or it arriving damaged, even worse than that is them wondering what's happening. So like my e-commerce business that I ended up selling sold salon furniture. So like big stuff, pedicure chairs, manicure tables, reception desks, barber chairs, things like that. So like some of those were made to order, some of them weren't. Regardless of which it was, they were shipped on a truck. Is it going entirely across the country? Is it not? How far is it going? So like there was a lot of communication that I had to give to the customer. And so if they ordered, and on the website it says, the availability time, let's assume 2 to 3 weeks. But if it's 9 days or if it's 18 days, and I don't tell them that, they're just sitting there wondering. And then when it gets close to that time, they call me in a panic. And I'm like, dude, you just chilled out. We're not late. It's all cool. But I can't say that. I have to tell them immediately, thank you for your order. And then after that, when I do have the estimated arrival time, I follow up again and I say, this is what we're expecting. If that changes, I will tell you. And sometimes even like halfway through there, just like, hey, just following up. It's on schedule. Don't worry. So like you actually have to tell them all of these things. Otherwise, they're going to wonder. And wondering is the worst. If anybody wonders about anything, it means you've failed. And so, yeah, so for accountants, if you get an inquiry or a question or something, immediate reply, hey, thanks for your email. I'll look into that. I'll let you know. Or even better, I'm booked up the next 2 days, but I'll look at it on Thursday and I'll let you know what I find out. Or whatever it is, just let them know. And then they can stop worrying about
Yeah,
it.
it's absolutely fantastic advice. I mean, we all hate getting that email when we send the query to the e-commerce company. It's like, we'll respond in 24 to 48 hours. But 100% worse is when you send an email off and there's no response, and now you have to figure out when somebody's going to get back to you. Like you said, like wondering is a problem because I've never wondered positively. If I'm wondering, it's in a very negative light. And that is,
Yeah.
that's the problem, right? Because that's the impression I'm making in my brain. So all of a sudden your service is an impression of negative thoughts. And you don't want people thinking negatively about your service or your product or anything. So the over communication, or we have a 24-hour rule, and I tell my team, like, the response to that 24 hours, an acceptable response is, I will respond in 2 days time. Like, that is 100% acceptable.
Yeah.
But you have to respond, because you don't want people to go like, did they get it? Has it gone to their junk? Do they even care? And when people start thinking you don't care, then you've lost the relationship, and you're probably going to have to replace that client because they're going to leave.
Yeah. We're recording this. It's 2 weeks till the tax deadline, roughly. And, on LinkedIn, I'm seeing all these memes about, for accountants, their clients, hey, just checking in. And the accountant's going, I will tell you, right? Maybe what we're talking about could help a little bit. Maybe a little bit of proactivity. I know you're so... Listen, I'm not telling any accountant what to do when they're out of their mind for tax season.
I don't do taxes, so I've got no idea what that feeling is, but I totally agree with you.
But maybe just send in a little message. Hey, we're working on it. We're super busy. Blah blah blah. Right?
Yeah, we had followed up with a tax person today, and they were like, "Have we filed that extension?" They're like, "Oh yeah, we'll get to it." Okay, guys, you actually haven't confirmed that you were going to file for it. Like there's been no confirmation, but you don't have numbers to, well, you've got the numbers, you don't have time to file the return. So give me something, like just something.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is. Just confirm that you're at least doing the work. But it's more fun to complain. I saw a meme today where it's, somebody's like, better to whine than be part of the solution. I was like, yeah, that's pretty much the accounting industry at this point.
But hey, you guys are overworked. Let's cut you some slack.
I don't do taxes, so I don't feel that. I don't feel the same pain. And I do feel for them, because that went from a busy season to a busy 12 months in that industry. So it's really tough. So we're 30 minutes in, and we haven't even spoken about the real meat and what you're doing right now. So tell us a little bit about TeamUp, and how did you stumble into this opportunity?
Yeah, that's funny. Stumble. That seems to be all I do. Stumble into bookkeeping, stumble into recruiting. So yeah, I built the bookkeeping business how I would build any team. I hired staff in the Philippines. Duh, right? Because that's what I had done, for several years before that, and they're great people over there, whatever. And so I didn't really think much of it, and eventually other accountants, you talk to people and they find out what you're doing, and they're like, oh, tell me more about that. What you're doing, you've got your team. What you got? And so eventually, you start talking about it, you get more questions and more questions and more questions. And then eventually, hey, do you think you could help me find somebody over there? Sure. Yeah, why not? That sounds like fun. And so, over time, they come back, they want somebody else, they'll tell somebody, and they're like, oh, okay, now they want me to help. And so Like eventually it started to be this real thing. And I'm like, wow, this is great. And I, if there's any one kind of thread that's kind of woven its way through my experience through all these businesses, it's the team stuff. So every business lives or dies by the team. And so anyway, yeah, that was thrilling to think, wow, there's an opportunity to help in that way. And it's a lot more fun than bookkeeping. So I pulled that out of the bookkeeping business and created a new company, Team Up. And so what I learned again, I'm entering an industry that I know nothing about. I did not know that it's unusual to hire people directly, which is what I always did.
Yep.
Most people who hire in the Philippines, do it the old way, which is to go through one of these big outsourcing companies that gets in the middle of everything. And I know, Zane, you've got your team in South Africa. There's nobody in between you and your team. It's just your team.
We just hire directly.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what I started helping people do with Team Up, and it's thrilling. That's all we do. We don't have any, I mean, it sounds complicated, outsourcing or whatever, but we kind of just skip over all of that.
So let's back it a little bit. So how long were you doing this within the bookkeeping company before you decided like it's worth spinning off and starting its own entity?
I think about a year and a half.
Okay.
Actually the longer version, the short, longer version of that story is I actually started offering it for our e-commerce clients.
Okay.
We offered a couple additional services to our e-commerce clients. We did one this is stupid. This is really, really dumb. We actually started a content writing service for our e-commerce clients. Like, all right, that was a bad idea. It didn't work out well. But the other one I had more personal experience with which was the team stuff. And so we offered recruiting service for our e-commerce clients. They need customer service people. Ultimately, we learned that, oh, wow, accountants have a much bigger need than the e-commerce people do. So yeah, we were doing some recruiting for about a year and a half or so.
So it's clear that you're a people pleaser, problem solver that sees opportunities and jumps on them. Now, even when you say it out loud, and we've had conversations about this, it still feels a little weird that you're hiring directly in the Philippines. And that just shows how much propaganda is out there that you got to use these middlemen. So how did you even figure out that you could hire directly? How did you figure out all the red tape around it, the rules, the regulations? I mean, I'm from South Africa, so I sort of knew the things, and I understood that I got to get smarter people to help me with the compliance stuff. That's the way I handled it. I'm not going to try to do it myself. But how did you figure this all out?
Well, I didn't know there was much. This is the common theme. I just go do something, and I learn about it as I'm doing it. And so, in the early days, starting that first e-commerce business, I needed some help, and I don't have, this is my personal side project, right? I don't have a lot of money to spend on this. So if I need help, oh gosh, I'm taking family finances away, right? So you end up going, okay, well, I've heard about hiring, freelancers. And so you go on websites like Upwork or online jobs. This was before Fiverr. Some people know about Fiverr. Yeah. That didn't exist back then. And I think even Upwork was called, I think it was called Odesk. Yeah, it wasn't called Upwork. And so you just end up doing those things, and you make a lot of mistakes, hiring the wrong people, not training them right. If it ever sounds like I know at all what I'm talking about, it's just because I've made all the mistakes. And yeah, so just over time, you learn how it works and how it doesn't work. And, you work with people in Egypt and Pakistan and somewhere in Eastern Europe and just kind of all over the place.
Yep.
And you end up just kind of learning, oh, you know what? This is actually not such a big deal. And, 4, 5, 6 years later, it's like, well, I think we make it out to be so much more complicated than it really is. It's really not that complicated.
But it's still scary, right? And having somebody
Sure.
to guide people the way is super helpful. And I guess that's where you come in right now. And it's sort of the Sherpa to hiring in the Philippines.
Yeah, sure. And a lot of times people ask about compliance and this and that, and some pretty simple, easy answers. If you want to hire someone directly, you have two main options. If you're not going to register a company in the Philippines, which most people aren't, that doesn't
Yep.
make sense until you have a large team. So until you're there, and I don't even know if you would want to do that once you get there, but yeah, you have a couple of options that are just really simple. One is you can hire someone as a contractor, and that's exactly what it sounds like. Contractors responsible for paying their taxes and doing their own compliance. Or you can hire someone through an employer of record, which is kind of like one of those outsourcing companies, but they have a much more pared back service. And they're just doing payroll and the compliance. And depending on the company, a bit of HR. Some might provide a little bit more or less. But in that case, they take care of all of the stuff that you would need to think about. And so really in both cases, yeah, I'm not a lawyer. I don't give legal advice. I don't play one on the internet. But I can tell you my, I think, rather well-informed opinion is, yeah, both of those options are compliant. There may be some details that you'll be curious about, but they're not, everything is understandable and achievable, and it's not really such a big deal.
Yeah, I think, one of the big questions that I would have if I was going that route, and the employer of record on it, it's sort of understandable, right? You've got a third party that's handling the compliance side. But I know when we first started out, before we started the company in South Africa, the trickiest thing for us was how do we pay these contractors? And in South Africa, there's pretty strict exchange controls.
Mm,
So that one money laundering. So
yeah.
that would be like the first, like the big question for me, like how simple is it to pay these people in the Philippines if we're paying them as a contractor?
So easy. I think I should give credit where credit is due to those outsourcing companies that I'm saying are not as important these days. They were actually really important, 15, 20 years ago, because we didn't have the communication channels that we do now. There was Skype, but it was kind of janky and not everybody liked or was able to use it. Like same thing with you mentioned payments, but also, we didn't even have, I don't think Slack existed until however long ago. So
Yep.
so the infrastructure to do this and building the offices and all and the management that came, that was all really important back then. But now that we have, you and I don't live in the same state and we're looking at each other through cameras, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like we have this, we have lots of tools that just, they make things so much easier. And so some of the answers to your payments question, I'll answer you, but all of those questions that everybody has, and believe me, I've heard all of them repeatedly. I talk to accountants, every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're things that you have to figure out once and put something in place, and then you just don't even bother with it again because it's done. So payments, there's great companies out there like Wise and Payoneer, and I'm sure a whole bunch of others that are really simple. So like we use Wise, and we pay our team through that. It gets exchanged into pesos and deposited into the team's bank account. It's actually not more cumbersome than paying somebody here.
And that's great to hear because, that is the cumbersomeness of making foreign payments can be, a stumbling block. It's obviously got way easier, especially since 2020. I think,
Hmm.
2020 was terrible, but it did fast track a lot of technology that's made all of our lives a lot easier. So there is that benefit of it. So, those are the type of things that go to my mind. And obviously, you figured them out. Like you said, I've never heard you say a bad word about, the competitors or, concern, you understand there's a place for them, but you've got another way. And I feel like sometimes as a community, as business people, we're always so worried about this is the only way to do things when there's a multitude of options, and they all have their pros and cons, and they all have the benefits that could come from each one of them. And I mean, I guess it's a long way to say that every person should assess what's better for them, because there's some people that they just wouldn't want to do this, right? It'd just be too stressful for them. Like you're talking about how you were worried about your financials because you didn't know any better. There's a lot of people that go in and hiring directly would stress them out. So go use those agencies, right? Have that pressure come off your plate. But if you want to cut out the middleman and you want to make those people a part of your team, using Isaac and Team Up seems like a great opportunity.
Well, I appreciate that. And yeah, you're right. I think for some reason in business, we often think we worry about the competition. So here's a message for accountants, right? So we're talking about my business, but this is true for my business now, but it's also true for accountants. There is so much more demand than there is supply. If accountants have more work than they can handle, basically. So what that means is you don't have to chase every possible lead. And I don't think you ever really did anyway. And I don't believe in that. I think there are many options and the world is big. And so if I'm talking about Team Up in my recruiting business, or if I'm talking about an accounting business, all you need to do is find the right people and help them figure out what's right for them. And if your solution is right for them, great. If not, you're going to save both of you headache by telling them to go somewhere else. And so that's kind of my attitude. There's a place for many options. Some are going to be right for others, and others, sometimes, one thing will be right. Like maybe they'll want to go use one of those outsourcing companies. And then after a few years, I don't really need their help anymore. And on their next hire, maybe they want to do that direct, and maybe they'll come see me. But it's like, who cares? Right? There's so much opportunity in the world. And I think that's maybe one lesson that I've learned from all of these different businesses is like, none of the stuff that people worry about matters. There's opportunity for everything, and all you have to do is find it. And so that takes so much pressure off. And so I'm not here to pitch my stuff myself, but if I have quote unquote sales call with someone, I don't have a pitch. I'm just going to talk to you like we're doing now. Like, hey, tell me about your problems. What do you want? And then if it's, if it would be better for them to do something else, I'll recommend that, So I don't know. I just don't worry about stuff.
Well, I mean, it's a great attitude, and it's something that anybody who's providing a service should be thinking about. We're there to serve, and we should be defining our market and helping the people we believe we have the best option for. And it's real maturity in understanding that your service is not for everyone. It's physically impossible for that to be true, and you really need to focus on who it is for. And when you get them as a client, give them the best possible service you can muster, and they will remain a client, and you'll be happy and they'll be happy. And that seems to be a great position to be in.
That's one reason why I'm a huge fan of niching or niching down. That's a big topic these days in the accounting world, and there are a lot of opinions on either side. I think it's fantastic, because then you can really decide who you want to serve and speak their language, and then not waste everybody's time. If it's not, you don't want to bring on a client and then 4 months later have this mess that, oh, you actually can't do what you said you could do. You're really good at serving the wine community. That's great.
And we try to give it the best go every single time with every single one of them and give them the service they need and deserve. So Isaac, let's change gears and let's sort of talk going forward a little bit. What are your goals in the short term for your business and for yourself?
Well, I'll start with the personal side, because I always like to think, no matter what I'm doing, why am I doing any of this? Why am I working hard? Why am I, it's about building a good life. And, I have a wife and daughter, and, my daughter's 14, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's just a few more years and she'll be gone. So, you know, I want to take advantage of what I have left. And, and same thing with my health, right? I spent a lot of years not really doing anything for my health. And, I think, well, do I want to really get in there into the gym and really just push hard? But then I read the book, The Slide Edge, and the summary is basically it's about compound growth. Small steps every day have massive impact, 5, 10, 20 years later. And so, okay, well, then that's what I want to do for my health. So, I don't want things to get in the way of that. So that's kind of the way I think about a lot of things. And so for the business, it's a pretty new business actually. I only we're actually right around our 1 year anniversary right now. It's been an exciting ride. Startups are stressful though. So, in the short term, yeah, I want to build it up to sort of a state. I'm not shooting for the moon just yet, but to get some stability at a moderate level is what I'm working towards right now.
And that's a great goal. We've spoken about your jump around, see the opportunity, go with the flow, make mistakes, and learn along the way. But what piece of advice do you wish you had received early in your career that would have helped you maybe have made this path just a little bit smoother?
This is something that I've learned very recently. So I left architecture now 10 years ago. Is it 10? 9 years ago. But I spent a year. I was doing e-commerce as a side hustle for a year before I left. And gosh, I wish I knew somebody had told me it's going to be really, really, really freaking hard. And you can short circuit all of that by why don't you just go work for somebody who is doing what you want to do and learn about it there? So you don't have to pay the price for all your stupid mistakes. Gosh, that's so simple. But why don't why don't the influencers and the podcasters and all of that say that? Instead, they say, no, just go start a business, bro. Shopify, Amazon,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, that would have made things so much easier. But
Yeah.
I'm quite happy with where I am, and I wouldn't be here if I hadn't done all of those weird steps along the way. So who knows?
And it's an interesting story, and it makes you unique, Isaac, and a fun person to talk to, either in this format or just one-on-one as well. So it's really intriguing. You've spoken a few times about it today, just talking about sort of building teams and figuring out ways to build good people around you. As a leader, what advice would you give to people coming into their own where they're now having to manage and build teams? What advice would you give them to be more successful in that role as a team builder?
I think it's all about empathy. I actually, believe it or not, I did take some notes because you got sent these questions and I'm thinking, what did I write? Yeah. Two things really. It's about empathy, which is seeing things from the other side. And this is something that, like, I don't want to boast about myself, but I do feel like one area that I've been different in my life from others is, like these days there's a polar divide, right? There's left versus right and up versus down. And I've kind of, always kind of felt like I could see the other side's point, even if I disagreed with it. And like the side that I'm on, I'm like, you guys, you shouldn't be saying that. Like, how, you really think that's how you're going to convince them to come up? No, you're just repelling them further. It's like, come on. So same thing in almost all, with your team, marketing. See if you can see it from their eyes. Put yourself in their shoes. How would you like to be treated if you were not the boss? It's like, I've had some pretty bad jobs in my day. Like I said, architecture was not there was some negativity in there. And like here I am building a business. I have a choice. So why would I choose to recreate something awful? And so like, what would I have wanted back then? I was good at what I did. So like, I don't need to, if you have people who are good, you don't need to worry so much about the things that you worry about. So anyway, put yourself in their shoes, see it from their eyes. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is share your vision. I think this is something that business owners don't do enough of. And for some reason, I think accountants especially, like they often will hire someone and say, great, here's the work, like and they expect people to be productive so quickly. But you haven't even told them your story, right? Like have you told them why you started the business? They want to know that. They want to know, have you told them about your background and like, have you told them all these things? And so have you told them why you're doing this? So like, why was I in e-commerce instead of, bookkeeping for dentists? Share that vision, get them really bought in and excited. And then you don't need to micromanage them so much, because half the time when they're not doing what you want them to do is because they don't understand why you ask them to do something in a certain way. I share the vision of the company, like why I team up, why Summit e-commerce advisors. But also when I give a task or a project, I also explain, why are we doing this task? And if they understand that, I don't need to bother with so much other stuff.
That's really important. There's so many times we just expect people to know, which is awfully, ridiculous at the end of the day. I mean, people need to understand what the outcome of these projects are at the end of the day. Why are we doing it? What are we trying to do? I talk to my team all the time about like, hey, yeah, we do bookkeeping and accounting, but really what we're there is to try to help these business owners be successful.
Yeah.
And the best way we can do that is giving them information that is accurate and timely.
Mm-hmm.
And if you talk to people, in my opinion, I'm trying to keep people in business. That's very different than we're trying to keep their books accurate.
Yeah.
And it gives them something to work towards. And I think that makes a big difference. There's no point of explaining the task. They know how to do the task. They need to know the why behind it.
Yeah, I love it.
Isaac, you've given us so much great information today. There are 1,000 lessons in here for people to learn. My favorite is just going to be, just wing it and figure it out along the way, which is, sometimes I've got a sign just on the far side, that says just start and ask questions later, which feels like it totally encapsulates who Isaac Smith is. But you shared with us you've got your wife and a daughter, but give us a little bit more insight into who is Isaac the person.
Well, I grew up in Portland, Oregon. That's where I live now. I've lived in other places as well. I spent a year in Korea. I love Asia. I've traveled quite a bit, traveled Europe and some in Central America. But Asia is just a special place in my heart. And yeah, I love to snowboard. I have snowboarded in Asia. I never thought, have I combined those two things? I did once. That's me.
Well, I can't let you go away without quickly touching on you and your wife just did a great trip for 18 and a half years. So if you share a little bit about that, because I thought that was just a great story. And I'm so glad you guys got out and were able to celebrate.
Well, thanks. Yeah. So, my wife and I just got back last week from a trip to Jamaica. And the background is, we actually went on our honeymoon to the Greek islands, Mykonos and Santorini. It was just amazing. And we always said, we should do this type of thing for our major milestone years. But we never actually did. 5 years came around and our daughter had just been born. And so that's not a good time. And then 10 years, at our 10 year, we had just moved back here to Portland. That's a longer story, but I convinced my wife that we should both quit our jobs, move in with my parents. We were living in Maryland, drive across the country, move in with my parents. Yeah. That was crazy. So that I could start this business is going to make us rich. And anyway, that failed. And then it did not go as planned. But anyway, so that happened at our 10 year. So that was not a good time. And then we're like, okay, finally we're settled. At our 15 year, we're going to do something amazing. And then it was COVID. It's like, oh, dang it. So eventually we just said, screw it. The next chance we can go, anytime, anywhere, let's just go. So yeah, 18 and a half years we spent on that anniversary in Jamaica.
Fantastic. It's a great story. One with a few unfortunate steps along the way, but it sounds, from what I can hear, that was totally worth the wait.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, a few unfortunate steps along the way. That could sum up my entire business adventure.
Right. Isaac, that's perfect. We like to end our conversations with some rapid fire questions. I have 5 questions for you. If you're ready, I will get them going.
Bring it on.
Yeah. Question number 1. What is your dream vacation?
Ooh, dream vacation. I don't know. Probably somewhere in Thailand. A bit of laziness by the beach, a bit of adventure, a bit of hiking, a bit of exploration, something like that.
Sounds pretty good to me. Question 2. Do you prefer audiobook or paper books?
It depends. If it's something I want to learn, like a business book, audio definitely, because I don't have the patience for that. But if it's a novel, definitely paper, because I just love to just soak it in. Just slowly. I'm a slow reader, so I read in the evening.
Best of both worlds. Question 3. If you only had 20 minutes to exercise, what would that exercise be?
Oh, I don't know. Like I said, I'm slight edging my exercise, so I'm doing a little bit better each year. I don't know. I love going for walks. But a 20-minute, I like to go for a long walk. So 20 minutes.
The walk's always a good option. I did a 20-minute one just last night, so they count.
Nice.
Question 4. What is your favorite piece of technology that you use to make your life better?
Ooh, favorite piece of technology. You know what? When we moved, so this house, we built this house a few years ago, almost a few years ago, and we bought a Roomba, a robotic vacuum, and that's huge. That's been amazing. It's like, wow, I don't have to vacuum anymore.
Especially with 5 cats, I can promise you Roombas make a big difference in life.
Yeah.
Final question. What was your favorite childhood meal?
Childhood meal? Pizza, for sure. Pizza or grilled cheese. Cheese and dough, like my daughter when she was younger. Anything cheese and dough. Ravioli, pizza. But for me, yeah, pizza or grilled cheese.
Great options. And with that, we end another Product Conversations. Thank you for joining us in this journey of learning and inspiration. Today, we've gained insight from our guests and taken another step towards understanding the diverse tapestry of leadership in business and accounting. Remember, each conversation is a step towards the positive transformation of business leaders. We hope our discussions have given you valuable takeaways to apply in your own career and life. Don't forget to subscribe to Product Conversations on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to hear your thoughts and experiences, so connect with me on social media channels. I'm most active on LinkedIn and would love you to join the conversation. Join us next time for more engaging stories, advice, and conversations that matter. Until then, keep striving for excellence and embracing growth. Thank you for listening, be kind, and goodbye from Product Conversations.